morning. Good morning, and here we are today, and we're watching the HEA 2023 annual online conference. In just a moment, I'll be speaking with Terry Harding about homeschooling and outcomes. But first, this session is brought to you by Maths Pathway. Maths Pathway combines proven learning science with the latest education technology to bring your student a personalised learning model. With Maths Pathway, you'll have access to qualified tutors and easy reporting to suit your state's requirements. They do offer a free trial, and their program suits year levels 5 to 10. Check out their website, mathspathway.com. And please pop over to our expo page where you'll find more information and links to their website and all their socials. So today we have Terry Harding, who will be joining us and talking to us about homeschooling outcomes. So I'll hand it over to Terry. Welcome, Terry.
Thanks, Tina. Appreciate that. Love maths. Fantastic. Well, look, thank you for the opportunity to share with you and with all viewers and listeners about homeschooling. So good morning, everybody, and wish you well. And I hope that what we have to share over the next few minutes will encourage you, because certainly my wife and I have been really encouraged about home education. And we have 5 children, 4 boys and a girl, and now they're all adults and into their, well, I won't say how old they are, but they have plenty of children. We've got 10 grandchildren as well. So we home educated our 5 children for over around 20 years or so. And it was a joy. It was just a joy to do it. We loved it. We felt that we grew in our relationships with our kids. And people used to ask me, why have you done this crazy thing, this homeschooling thing? And for us, we're Christian people, so we wanted to have Christian emphasis on our children's education, and we wanted to use Christian curriculum as well. And so that was initially what got us started. But after about 12 months of homeschooling, when people would ask me, and I travelled around the country talking to folk about homeschooling, they'd say, well, why are you doing this? And I changed my tune. We hadn't changed our faith position, but the reason we started to give was for closeness and intimacy and relationship with our kids. And so I still am so grateful to homeschooling because of the relationship that my wife and I have with our children and now our grandchildren. So that's a little bit about our background. And yeah, Tina, it's been a real lovely journey. And now we're in a position where my wife and I are no longer homeschooling. However, I have extended my interest in homeschooling by being the manager of Australian Christian homeschooling. I have been the manager for quite a long time, since 1994. And we've seen in Australian Christian homeschooling tens of thousands of children and, of course, their families being supported with curriculum and educational services. But, of course, homeschooling is much bigger and wider than just our group of Australian Christian homeschooling. Homeschooling is it's a vast experience for many people in the modern homeschool unit. But some of you may have seen some of the papers I've written, and I wanted to start off, Tina, just to do a little bit of history. I know homeschoolers love history. So the first evidence that we have of homeschooling in Australia was either 1788 or early 1789, which is basically the first year of colonisation in Australia. Of course, prior to that, the Indigenous communities, guess what? They were homeschooling or home educating, if you will, and raising their own children in their particular culture. But in terms of, let's call it formal education, that is literacy, numeracy, and everything that comes connected to that. Yeah, the first homeschooling, my first education, formal education in Australia was homeschooling. So we are not the new kids on the block. So that's something to be very proud of. And so I would like to read from one of my papers, and if you want, I can send that to you, Tina, and anyone who wants a copy, they can get a copy of one of my papers I published last year, that's 2022, just on an introduction to homeschooling. And in it, I cite some of these interesting facts that no one seems to know about. But the first homeschoolers in Australia was a lady, Isabel Rosson, and she, in her home, educated children of the military. She charged a small amount of money to do that, and she also educated kids of the convicts, and she did that for free, which was a wonderful, charitable and generous way of being and helping out with these children who had arrived on the first fleet. Now, we know that there were 17 children of convicts, and there were 19 children of the marine personnel on that fleet. So anyway, Isabel contributed to their well-being by home educating in Sydney in her home. But she wasn't the only one at that time. Thomas McQueen was doing that on Norfolk Island, and also Mary Johnson at Parramatta. So there you go, Tina. How's that? It's pretty cool, isn't it, to know that homeschooling was really the first formal form of education in Australia.
Awesome.
Is that all right? Would you mind if I read out some quotes, Tina?
No,
Would that be
I'm
okay?
quite happy to hear some quotes. It'd be great.
Yeah. Look, I want to read to you about Richard Johnson and Mary Johnson. Now, that Richard Johnson was our first minister of religion in the colony, and anyway, there's a comment here in our history, and it's about the quality of the education that Richard and Mary's children had, and it's a quote I'll read to you. Milba and Henry had two fine children. Milba, you will see what progress she has made in her writing, and it's a pity she's not in England. So they thought that Milba would have been better off in school, but the comments were she was going well in her literacy. And in similar manner, Eliza Marsden talked about her own children, her daughter, and she was called Anne, and Anne's literacy was highlighted. And so she wrote at one stage, "And there not being one good school that I could have been very happy to have heard her being safe with my mother. She," that's her daughter, "is now 5.5 years old. She reads a little and works very neat." So there we go. So a few quotes from 1799. There. So homeschooling, it was there and in the beginning. However, government took over in terms of formal schooling, and that just grew and developed through the 1800s, or what we call the 19th century. And but during that time, some of our educational historians document that homeschooling was happening in remote locations and places where there were no schools. So it was happening by necessity. And so literacy and numeracy were key factors in the early formal education of Australia, where there were no schools. That is, there were no government schools or religious schools. People were home educating. So I hope you appreciate that thought, because it's something that I really like to highlight to people.
Yeah, homeschooling happened way before formal schooling.
Exactly. And so too, if you trace it, back through the Western civilization, and And one of the things that pushed it along so clearly was the fact that people wanted to read the Bible right across Europe and Western civilization, and going back even to the times of ancient Greece and Rome. Okay, well, how do you get started with homeschooling? Well, there are different ways of doing it, but I've documented 3 different forms of homeschooling. And I've called that the formal, structured form of homeschooling, where parents buy a particular curriculum or a package or something like that, and they use that as their homeschooling. Secondly, the second format is an eclectic measure of homeschooling. Now, eclectic means to mix together. So parents will use, obviously we've all got the internet, they buy books and of their own choosing, and they use those products or resources for the education of their kids. And the third methodology of homeschooling is called unschooling, natural learning, or child-directed learning, where, and it's done in many different ways, where the interests of the child directs the education. And so there are the 3 types of homeschooling used, or home education implemented in Australia. The thing that's important about it, though, because some people talk about schooling at home and they speak a little bit derogatorily of people using that style. Whatever method you use, the informal, unstructured, conversational learning happens in each of those 3 styles: the structured, the eclectic, and the unschooling. So one of the powerful factors in homeschooling is what I call the PED, the parental educational dynamic. You might say that's a fancy term. What's a PED? What's a parental educational dynamic? Well, the parental talks about the who. The educational talks about the what. And the dynamic talks about the power. So what I've called this parental educational dynamic is the invisible relationship, a faith-based relationship between a parent and a child that makes the parent a teacher. Now, I'm not talking about religious faith at this point. It's about the faith that is between the parent and the child that makes the parent the teacher. Now, this starts, well, for my wife and I, it started at the first time we were aware of the importance of our child getting knowledge from us and starting to trust us. And we noticed this at the first time our eldest child was brought to my wife's breast. We were in Hornsby Hospital and we were young. We didn't know much. And, you know, we brought our son to my wife and he didn't know what to do. And we thought we knew what to do. We just kind of tried to get him on. And there was a lady who was very experienced and she helped us. And she just said, just stroke his cheeks and push him on and he'll figure it out. And yes, he got on to my wife and he gained what he wanted: comfort, warmth, nourishment, and nurture. Here's the rub. The second time we brought Daniel to my wife's breast, he leaned forward and locked on. So he ended up learning what to do. So I want to use this to explain to you what I mean by the parent educational dynamic. The first point is that the child gets some knowledge. As he came to my wife, he learned something. The second time, he knew what he was going to get. And that's that building of faith. Another illustration would be when he's 3 or 4 years old, he says to me, "Daddy, what day is it?" And I say, "Son, it's Tuesday." Now, he doesn't know what a Tuesday looks like, tastes like, smells like, but he trusts his father, and he says it must be Tuesday. That's that faith-based relationship that makes the parent a teacher. You are teachers, if you may not be homeschooling. If you're homeschooling, you already have thought about this. You taught your child the hardest activity, cognitive activity that there can ever be, and that is to speak the English language from scratch. Very difficult thing to do, but by the age of 5, your child has mastered it far greater than the people I used to teach a long time ago in TAFE. I used to teach English as a second language, and so folk from other countries, adults, would come to my classes, and you'd teach them the semantics and teach them the vocabulary and all of the grammar. And you know, my 5-year-old had mastered it far better than a 25-year-old adult from another location trying to learn the English language. So you are a teacher as a parent, and you can teach your kids at home. But there you go. That's a little aside, talking about the powerful phenomenon I call the parent educational dynamic. So there you go, Tina. It's pretty good. As parents, we all have it.
We certainly do.
Yeah.
You know, I have had 6 children myself, and I taught them all to read. So yes, that's what it is. It's your powerful dynamic with your children. It's that relationship.
Yeah. And look, that's the quality in every parent with their child. The difference for homeschoolers is this: we've decided to do it full time and not entrust our children to other people who might be strangers, or another system that might be different from our expectations or our philosophy. And so we've discovered this secret, and we're saying, hey, I want this deep relationship, and I want to grow the teaching and learning factor as part of a family-based form of learning. So yeah, that's a little bit of what we really, really are. How do you get started? I think I've started talking about that. I will say you have started. Whether you're homeschooling or home educating or not, you are a teacher. You have the parent educational dynamic with inherent in you, and your child trusts you. What you say is what they believe and what they learn. It just depends on how long you want to do it. Yeah. So
That's right. We always found that your children are a reflection of you, and what you teach them, they will then shine through with that.
Yeah. So if you're wondering how to get started, the answer is just have a go. And obviously, to make life easier for yourself, talk to somebody who is homeschooling, someone who is a friend or someone you know who's homeschooling. Or you might come to us at Australian Christian Homeschooling and or go onto a website or something like that to get an idea of how to get started. So it's been my experience when I've talked to thousands of parents that people don't do this lightly. They take a long time to consider, weigh up the consequences, weigh up the costs. And so ultimately, if you're wanting to homeschool, usually it means that your family will be a single income family. And that's a major choice that my wife and I had to make. But we felt that it paid off better. We had this view that you only get one go at raising each of your children. And so we wanted to make sure that our kids were well educated, good readers, good with numeracy, had spiritual focus and character development, and lots of other good things. But they were what we wanted. Those were the issues we wanted. So Yeah, so you can have a go. You might want to choose a particular type of curriculum. You might want to choose a type of homeschooling, as I mentioned earlier, the structured type, the eclectic type where you cobble together things yourself, or the child-directed or the unschooling method. In any of those three ways, you will be drawing on this powerful relationship between yourself and your child. And it's a wonderful and glowing and wonderful way to grow your relationship. Anyway, getting started. So you've chosen what style you want to do, structured, eclectic, unschooling. You've chosen your resources. Okay. What about now? Well, what about drawing your children out of school? Or maybe your children have never been to school. There are the two different types of families. My feeling is if you see the need, just do it. Just do it. Have a go. Trust your instincts. Talk to friends or talk to someone like Australian Christian Homeschooling and just get into it. Now, what about legality? Is this thing legal? And all I can say is yes, it is. Yes, it is. Every state and territory in Australia has a structure under the umbrella of their education department to register homeschoolers. So it doesn't matter what state or territory you're in, if you choose to register your children with that state or territory education department, you can call them, you can look at their websites, and you can do that registration of your children with your state or territorial education department. However, there are many who have chosen over the years to forego that. And people say to me, well, is that legal? And the answer is, look, the Education Acts say that you need to do this registration process if you want to homeschool. But my experience and my research is showing that there are parents who choose to not do that. And that's just a fact. It's not me telling you to not do it. It's just that's the way it's rolled out among homeschoolers over the last 30 or so years. So, Tina, I don't know about you. Have you ever been asked before why people choose this weird, non-conventional form of education?
Many times. Many
Okay,
times.
what do you say?
I say it's a great way to build your family. Yeah. It's a great way to teach your children, especially to not have them under the stressful situation that they would have in a school situation. And it also gives your children the freedom to learn at the pace that they like to learn. Some children learn lots in a very small amount of time, and some children take longer. And I think that's the beauty of homeschooling, is that you're not confined to a time for learning. It's not about how much time you spend. It's about how well you've learnt something. And when you've mastered something, it means you can go to the next thing and master that, but you're not under a time constraint. It means your consolidation and understanding is there, and then the foundation is there to grow to the next level of ability.
Great. I'm sure there are lots of people watching right now that are nodding their heads and say, yeah, that was me. Yeah, that's what we did. Yeah, that was our need. And more power to you. I did a research piece for a master's degree at QUT in '97 and looked at the reasons why people choose homeschooling. And look, I've just asked that same question in 2022, and that was just within Australian Christian Homeschooling, and I just asked that question, and there were 203 families that wanted to respond to that. And so I might just elaborate on some of the reasons that they gave. The big picture they gave, I've just summarised like that that there were 6 key reasons, and I'm going to read them out to you. The first reason that the family, and this was done in 2022, and I split the families between the ones who had started homeschooling with Australian Christian homeschooling pre-COVID restrictions, and the second group post-COVID restrictions. So it's really, really interesting. And I'm going to show you some numbers in a minute that really flattened me. I couldn't get over what's going on in Australia with respect to the growth of homeschooling and registration and non-registration. But the 6 reasons were: government policies was number 1. People were really concerned about the policies that had crept into government based education, and secondly, the policies about health before and after the COVID factor. And I'm going to read some parent statements out to you, so it's not coming from me, but it's coming from probably people who are watching this video right now. They would have participated. The second issue that they gave as reasons was the school environment that their kids had been in. And there are 2 negative factors driving people out of the schooling system, that is, driving children with their families out of the schooling system, and I call them push factors. So 2 push factors that pushed them out. One was government policies, and second was things happening in schools. Now, there were 4 what I call pull factors that pulled kids into the home environment for their education. So the first one of those was the strength of the home environment for education, that our homes were great places for learning. The second of the pull factors was parents who said, hey, this is my role. I just want to be with my kids. I don't want to miss out on their life. And the third pull factor was religious reasons. People were concerned, and philosophical reasons as well, philosophical and religious reasons. People were concerned about these government policies that were anti-family, anti-religion, what families felt was important to teach children. And the fourth pull factor is concerns for my child. My child has special gift. They're highly gifted and talented kids. They're highly talented sportsmen, or they're in the arts or dance or music. And my children have ADD, they have ADHD, they have learning difficulties. My children have health difficulties. My children are stressed out by schooling. My children are needing to recover from bullying, all those things, concerns for the child. So there you go. The research gave those 6 reasons, 2 push factors and 4 pull factors that were pulling them into the home. And, you know, I'll just read a couple of the things that parents had said about reasons they chose, just as Tina has said, and I've mentioned about my wife and I, the reasons. The government policies, some parents said, radical gender theory, critical race theory, leftist woke political agenda. That's just one person said that. Another person wrote and said, zero trust in government education. Racial and sexual educational materials are blasphemies. Another one said, COVID restrictions and nonsense in schools are creating anxiety issues in kids, and we're trying to avoid that. So, and it goes on and on. I won't read a lot. If once I get this paper published, I'll make it available to HEA, and you can send it for free to anybody who wants to read it, Tina.
That would be lovely.
Yeah. The concern about the school environment was, one parent said, I've discovered how much my kids have not learned at school. I feel I've paid for very expensive babysitting. Wow, this was a man, this was a dad, and he said, That's the expensive babysitting over these many years and how much of a waste of time and money it actually has been. A month said, my children have a dyslexia, which could not be addressed at school. By the end of his first year, my bright, delightful, intelligent child felt that he was stupid and wanted to die. I mean, look, I want to stress that we home educators, homeschoolers, are not anti-school. In terms of schooling, in Australia, we have a wonderful system, a dual system of government and non-government schools. So we're not bashers of schools. So I just emphasise what I'm reading to you here are the testimonies of specific people in specific schools who found things to be impossible and felt constrained to pull their children out. So please never get the idea that homeschoolers or home educators are anti-school. No, it's just that we are exercising parental choice to do what we believe is the best for our children and our families. I don't want to be too negative, but here we go with a few more. There's very little support for highly gifted kids, one parent said. One lady talked about her daughter. She witnessed boys fighting and punching and throwing chairs at times, smashing windows, absolute rebellion to teachers, and the teachers could do nothing due to red tape and laws. So again, I emphasize we're not anti-school. This is just the experience of one girl and her mother, and she felt she had no choice. I could read lots and lots out, but I won't do that. Someone else said going through New South Wales lockdowns opened our eyes to see how differently our children learn, and school was holding them back in areas. Someone else said there were gaps in their learning, etc., etc. So getting away from the push factors, looking at the pull factors, families said, or parents said this, homeschooling provides a healthier and more natural educational setting, which is just really what Tina has just told us. Providing a flexible, non-stressful environment and providing an open-ended learning which promotes ongoing creative learning. Our kids flourished with one-on-one schooling, and it worked better for our kids. Flexible routine, etc., etc. Healthy family relationships they talk about. Kids growing in confidence, mental confidence, emotional confidence, and social confidence. I'll just wind up with a few more examples. One parent said, I should have done it sooner. It's been the best thing for kids and family. My kids are thriving in their education. Issues parents talked about bullying and getting away from that. Or maybe people talk about bullying, so I'll just do a couple of bullying examples. One parent said, my child was being bullied, the teachers didn't care, and I'm not knocking teachers, this is the parent's perception. Another lady said her friends, meaning the daughter, her friends weren't making good choices and she was being bullied for standing up for what was right, and on and on. So you could imagine. And so positive statements, my kids are thriving in their education. I've omitted negative social interaction. My child has had bad experiences with nasty kids excluding and isolating her, which made her hate school. She now enjoys good socialisation in a good, safe environment where she is much more peaceful now. She gets plenty of good socialisation now. So I guess that probably... Anyway, there's statements that parents have said as to reasons why. Both the push factors, which have pushed people out, they felt they've had no choice, and the pull factors that have pulled families into the family home context. So, yeah, it's quite amazing, isn't it, Tina, the things that people experience all around Australia.
Correct. Yes, they do. And working on the helpline, I hear a lot of those things, and I get to assist people myself.
Right.
When they're in the HEA helpline, and do get some lovely calls from people and thanking me for giving them some guidance, and that's always a really good thing when you know that you've helped someone, especially when they're in a terrible state because they feel that school has let them down.
Yeah. Well, in terms of that, and bearing in mind, I've been a school teacher, high school mainly, and secondly, principal since 1981. I've been an interim principal for short periods, like 7 months, waiting to get a new principal into a school. And my longest period was 2.5 years just recently in Victoria. At the same time, I was manager of the homeschooling, Australian Christian Homeschooling. So I just would like to really make a point here, that this week, so we're talking toward the end of October 2023, there's a letter signed by 45 high-quality academics from all around Australia who have addressed this as an open letter to all of the ministers of education in Australia, and they are decrying the issues of the poor education standards within the country in schools. Again, we're not bashing schools, but here we have 45 of and you can download this. It's referring to the problems in education in Australia, and that pans out to the recent NAPLAN scores where, over 1/3 of Year 9 students, now bear in mind, a Year 9 student's been in schooling for 10 years, 1/3 didn't meet the basic requirements for literacy and numeracy according to the NAPLAN scores for this year, 2023. That's a pretty sad indictment. And I find at Australian Christian Homeschooling, a lot of parents who have their children who are not doing well in their literacy and numeracy, bringing their kids out into homeschooling, out of the schools, into homeschooling to repair literacy, numeracy, and sometimes to repair damaged relationships. I meet people as I travel around the country, and they give me testimonies like this. Oh, yeah, my child was home educated for 2 or 3 years, and now they're doing really well. Anyway, I won't quote anybody on that, but and so there's this issue at the national level where some of the best professors of, say, for example, the science of reading, those people, Professor Pam Snow and many others like her, have signed this letter. And Jennifer Buckingham was a lead in the writing of the letter. And they're just saying we have to change education in our schools. The other thing that this year brought up, Tina, was that we actually had a Senate inquiry into disruption in classes in schools. Can you get your mind around that? That the Senate of Australia has a full inquiry to problems in disruptive classrooms. Again, we're not bashing schools, but things in many schools need a lot of improvement. And for this reason, homeschooling has really blossomed in terms of numbers. Now, I did some research early this year, and I found across the nation, you cannot determine how many people are homeschooling. So now we're onto a new topic. How many are actually doing this unconventional form of education? But what I did, I researched every government in every state and every territory to find out how many children are registered as homeschoolers. Now, bear in mind, that will not give you the correct number of kids being homeschooled, because there's a substantial number of children who are not registered with their state or territory education department. But look, I'll just read you what the statistics are, fresh, hot off the press, that over the period from 2018 to 2022, homeschool grew 110% over a 5-year period. That's the total of all states and territories. And that is just the number of children who are registered with their state or territory educational authority. That doesn't count the many homeschoolers who have chosen not to take the registration route.
Mm.
In particular, now I know this looks very amateurish, but I'm going to show you a graph here. And I just want to highlight the growth between 2021 and 2022. The green stripe here is how many homeschool kids were registered in 2021. And this orange stripe here demonstrates the numbers who were homeschooled and registered with their government authority in 2022. In 1 year's gap, it just jumped, and it's an embarrassment to many state and territory education ministers. They see that as a concern. And I'll just read a couple of little statistics out. So in that 1 year, the number of home-educated kids who were registered, now that's just the registered ones only, in Queensland it grew by 69%, Victoria 66%, South Australia 36%, New South Wales 35%, WA 35%, Northern Territory 32%, Tasmania 14%, and it's ACT 5%. The average is over just that 1 year period, the number of registered homeschool kids across Australia was 47%.
Mm.
Just let that sink in. So it's a growing phenomenon.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm really, really happy about that, because I love to know parents who are growing their relationship with their kids, whether it's talking about their gardening, feeding their pets, doing some maths, doing ballet lessons, swimming, religion, whatever. Parents are using this powerful teaching factor of the parent educational dynamic, and it's growing, and I love it. People say to me, oh, well, this was an old myth, if you like. The first biggest myth is, of course, can the kids be socialised? And the answer is yes, they can, because the amount of conversational activity that a child has in a school between an adult and a child, there's been a lot of research into that, and it's pretty minimal. It's pretty minimal. I'll say no more rather than bore you with the statistics. But the amount of relationship between the parent and the child in home education is massive. Whether it's this is how you do the 5 times table, or look, we're going to look at Pythagoras's theorem, or put the garbage out because the garbos are coming tomorrow. These are all cognitive developers because of the power of the creative tongue. And as I speak to my child, the child hears, and it grows them cognitively and spiritually, psychologically, etc. So that's a big, big issue, the factor of growing the child. Now, we're probably going too long now, Tina. I do want to say this. That you, if you're thinking of homeschooling, you can do it. There's no one else apart from you that shares your genetics with your children, your history with your children, every experience, both good and bad, with your children, your love with your children, your anger and fights with your children, your ancestors, and on your psychology, your history, your values, your religion. You share this unique, powerful experience that not even the best of our teachers in Australia can reduplicate. And a teacher doesn't even know if Mary's dog died last night. And we're not knocking teachers. What we're saying is you have a very unique relationship with your child, I'm saying it's God-given. Enjoy it, use it, grow your child, shape their character, and enjoy the good times and the tough times. And if you want to start, reach out to someone who can help. If you get stuck, reach out. There's a wonderful community of home educators near you, around the regions, around the nation. So I'm not sure if that's enough. Tina, what do you think? Have you got any questions or anything, any comments to add?
I think it's wonderful. I think the socialization issue is something that is a big myth. Homeschooled children are very well versed with other people, especially when they go to homeschooling groups. As I often talk to people on Helpline, I tell them, when you go to a homeschooling group, your children are just not talking age. They're talking children who are older or younger to the parents, because when they get out of school, if they ought to be in school, that's what you do in life. You are actually talking to people who are older than you, younger than you, and you're learning to actually interact and to talk to your different aged peers. But that's something I think in the homeschooling community we do really well, is that we teach them that we respect whether they're older or younger, and that you treat each one equally. And that's the important part.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, you reminded me of something there, because socialization is a myth that needs busting. One of the respondents in my research, it was a mother, and she said, my teenage son would refuse to go to family activities. But after a few months of homeschooling, he just changed his whole attitude and whole character. So the building of deeper, more intimate relationships, and growing that relationship. And this mum said, my son is now happy to come to family dinners and whatever else they do as a family. It was exactly what you're saying. And for children to be able to connect with older people, adults, even old grey hairs like me, right down to connecting with newborn babes in the family or in the community, in their family, their broader family. Yeah, well said.
That's great. Yeah. Thank you so much, Terry. I really appreciate that time that you've spent in educating us in homeschooling and in research. It is so important that we do know how to communicate with other people who have homeschooled. No question is silly. That's something that's really important that people know. If they think it's a stupid question, it's the question to ask, because if you don't get an answer, you will never know what the answer is. And I think that's something that I always taught my children. Question lots of things and ask questions. It's important.
Yeah,
it's very important.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Terry, for joining us today. And if anybody wants to know any more information about that, I'm sure that on the Australian Christian Homeschoolers website, there's lots of information. There's also lots of information on the HEA website that you can find. And we would really like to thank you so much for your time. And we'd like to also thank once again our sponsor, mathspathway.com, for this session. You can hop into our Expo page for more information about that and for our other sponsors. So stick around, there's lots more and coming your way today. So thank you, Terry, once again, and we go back to the Conference Expo. Thank you.
Thanks, Tina. Bye, everybody.